You wake up the next morning in a room that smells faintly of cedarwood, burnt bread, and the kind of expensive lavender soap that palace servants pretend not to judge you for using improperly. Your back cracks as you stretch. Turns out, sleeping on a divan with embroidered lions does not make you feel royal. Across the courtyard, wedding preparations have entered day 2. That's right, day 2. Turns out, when someone returns from the dead, the Greeks don't just throw a party, they summon an era. There are already 3 goats on a spit, a lyre competition brewing between 2 very competitive uncles, and someone has started rehearsing a ballad that includes at least 12 verses about sheep. Apollo is, of course, nowhere to be found. You eventually find him on the roof. He's lying on a tile like a lizard sunbathing, arms behind his head, squinting up at the clouds. You stand beside him and cross your arms. So, you almost died. For what? Sentimental closure? Apollo hums. I find near-death experiences clarifying. You're immortal. Exactly. Makes near-death that much more interesting. You roll your eyes and sit down beside him. The sun's warm, and despite your best efforts, it does feel good to just exist for a minute. You still owe me dinner, you mutter. He chuckles. I brought you back from the underworld. I think I've paid my tab. Around noon, the celebration truly kicks off. And by kicks off, we mean the goats are officially declared sufficiently golden, and an elderly woman begins blessing literally every item in the courtyard, including you. Twice. Alcestis, now radiant and impossibly calm, glides through it all like she was never gone. It's eerie in the best way, like watching a song step out of an instrument and walk around. Admetus sticks to her side like a very handsome barnacle, the kind with perfectly tailored sandals and a deep fear of losing her again. You wander the party, plate in hand, sampling olives, honeyed pastries, and a surprisingly good cheese wheel shaped like Mount Olympus. Somewhere, someone's playing a flute solo that sounds suspiciously like the theme song from a travel documentary. Apollo eventually corners you by the fig tree. So, he says, holding out a goblet, what did we learn? You take the drink. That you are dangerously persuasive and moderately insane. He lifts his cup in a mock toast. Correct. You clink glasses, and for a brief moment, everything feels right. Balanced, like the scales of fate finally paused mid-swing just to let someone breathe. But you know Apollo. He doesn't stay still long. Later that evening, after the 3rd retelling of the whole trip to the underworld story, this time involving a much more dramatic rescue sequence involving invisible harpies, which did not happen, he pulls you aside. I need to leave soon, he says, adjusting the clasp on his cloak. You raise an eyebrow. Another divine errand? He grins. More of a freelance situation. That's not comforting. He looks past you, eyes on the horizon. There's a storm coming, a real one. Not just the poetic kind. You blink. A prophecy? Shrugs. Maybe just a hunch. Either way, I'm heading north. You cross your arms. You do remember you're still on that side job as a shepherd, right? He smiles. I said I'd protect the flock. I never said I'd stay in one place. By the time the stars rise, the palace has quieted. The fires burn low. Alcestis and Admetus are dancing slow and soft under the cypress trees, swaying to a tune no one else hears. A few sleepy musicians hum along. You sit near the edge of the garden, tracing shapes in the dirt with your sandal. Apollo finds you one last time. I left something in the stables, he says, casually. You frown. Please don't be a snake again, he laughs. No, this one's a gift. For the road. You don't ask where you're going next. You know better by now. He offers you a pouch. Inside are dried figs, a tiny carved sun, And because he can't resist a small scroll that simply says, "Ask for Eurydice. She owes me one." Before you can say anything, he claps you on the shoulder. "Take care of yourself, shepherd." You nod. "You too, part-time god." And then he's gone. Not in a poof of smoke or a glittering golden exit, mind you. He just walks away, whistling, like a man who's always leaving something behind and never looking back. You sleep that night under the stars. The same stars that watched you cross the Styx. The same stars that blink above the gods and mortals alike. The fig tree rustles in the wind. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a lullaby. You don't dream of the underworld. You dream of olive groves and warm sun, of laughter and burnt bread, and a woman who came back from the edge. And in the morning, when the sheep begin to bleat and the palace stirs, you'll be ready to start walking again, because something tells you your story's not over. Not yet. The next morning, you're already awake before the sheep start bleating, which frankly feels like a personal betrayal. After all, you did escort a soul back from the underworld. You'd think the universe would let you sleep in at least once. But no, there's bleating, clanging, and somewhere in the distance, a lyre solo that's deeply off-key. You sigh, roll over, and stare at the sky. And that's when you realize Apollo's really gone. It's not dramatic. There's no scorched earth, no golden footprints, just absence. Like he was never here at all, except you know better. The sun feels different now, like it's a little more in on the joke. You eventually drag yourself up and head to the stables, remembering the gift he said he left. When you arrive, you find it tucked behind a bale of hay, wrapped in faded blue linen with a tiny wax seal pressed into the shape of a lyre. Inside, a scroll, a map, and a note that simply reads, "Northern Thessaly." Something strange with the river. Stay weird. You stare at it for a full minute, torn between laughter and the vague dread that only comes when a god gives you directions and absolutely zero context. Because rivers don't just go strange without divine interference. Still, you've come this far. The walk north is uneventful. For a while, the landscape rolls out like a soft green quilt. Olive trees here, wheat fields there, villagers wave. One woman gives you a pouch of almonds, muttering something about your sun-touched aura. You don't correct her. Free almonds. By mid-afternoon, you start to notice the change. The birds stop singing, the breeze dies, and the trees, usually chatty, creaking, rustling, stand still like they're holding their breath. Then you hear it. The river. It's not the gurgling babble of a happy stream. It's humming. A deep, low tone like a choir warming up. And underneath that, a rhythm, faint but constant, like footsteps or hooves. You approach slowly. The river isn't flowing. It's circling, a wide, perfect spiral, like someone stirred the water with a celestial spoon. In the center stands a rock, and on that rock sits a girl. Well, not a girl exactly. She's translucent, glowing faintly blue, with hair that floats as if she's underwater, even though she's clearly not. She sees you before you speak. "Oh," she says, annoyed. "You're early," you blink. "I didn't realize we had an appointment." She sighs. "Apollo told me you might be the one to fix this, but honestly I was hoping for someone taller." You raise an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Calliope," she says, "muse of epic poetry. River guardian on weekends. This is my current disaster." She gestures to the spiral. You take a step closer, and immediately the air thickens like you're wading through syrup. You wobble slightly. She snaps her fingers, and the resistance drops. "You're welcome," she mutters. Calliope explains that the river used to flow normally until about 3 weeks ago. Something ancient stirred, she says. Not evil, just very old, like a god woke up in the wrong era. And now the river won't listen. It keeps circling, pulling things inward. Animals, fishermen, stories. Wait, stories? She nods. Rivers carry more than water. They carry memory. And when they spiral, they forget. You rub your temples. So how do we fix it? She shrugs. Usually Apollo sings at it until it behaves. But he's off brooding somewhere. Of course he is. Anyway, she continues, I might have a lead. There's an old oracle in a cave up the ridge. She remembers the river before it started spiraling. If anyone knows what's wrong, it's her. You glance toward the dark smudge of hills on the horizon. Let me guess, she speaks in riddles and requires an offering. 2 goats and a riddle off, Calliope says with a smile. But I can help you cheat. The hike to the cave is as pleasant as any climb involving crumbling steps, aggressive wind, and one extremely judgmental crow. When you finally reach the entrance, you pause to catch your breath and adjust your shirt, which has somehow twisted itself entirely backward like a sentient toga. Inside, the oracle is already waiting. She's wrapped in layers of wool, her hair silver, her eyes sharp and glinting like polished obsidian. You're late, she says, despite you being told you were early earlier. Chronology's a scam, you mutter. She smiles. True. The riddle-off is surprisingly civil. She asks what has no breath but sings, no legs but runs, and no memory but forgets everything. You stare at her. That's the river, isn't it? She blinks. Well, that was quick. You shrug. I read the room. The real offering, it turns out, isn't goats. It's a memory. One you don't want anymore, she says. But one that still weighs something, you think, then remember. A moment years ago when someone you trusted left without explanation. The way you stood in the doorway after they vanished, trying not to feel anything. The silence after the slam, you give it up. And the oracle nods. Good, she says. The river will remember itself now. When you return to the spiral, Calliope is already humming to it. Her melody coils around the current, weaving through the loops, and slowly, miraculously, the river straightens. It doesn't rush forward. It just remembers how. Calliope turns to you. Not bad, shepherd, you shrug. I'm learning. She gives you a tiny smile. You might want to head east next. There's a town with statues that are starting to talk. You blink. Is that a problem? She just winks. Depends on what they're saying. You shake your head and start walking. The road ahead is long and strange and full of talking statues, apparently. But you've dealt with gods and ghosts and rivers with identity crises at this point. You're just getting warmed up.
Section 8, the road east, is dusty, winding, and, according to an elderly shepherd you pass along the way, haunted by whispering marmots. You don't know what to do with that information, so you nod solemnly and continue walking. The sheep you pass don't seem haunted, mostly just confused. One of them looks at you like it remembers something traumatic from a past life. You nod back. You get it. By the time you reach the outskirts of the next town, your sandals are coated in dust, your shoulders are aching, and you've developed a strong dislike for pebbles in general. But then you see the statues. They're everywhere. Not in gardens or temples like you'd expect, but scattered randomly. One leans against a tavern wall, arm mid-gesture like it was telling a story, and got turned to stone mid-sentence. Another squats in an alley, eyes wide, holding what might be a pie, and they're talking, not all at once, thankfully. That would be horrifying, but every few seconds one of them mumbles a line like, He took the left fork and never returned. Or the olives weren't that bad. Or, your personal favorite, don't trust the rooster. He knows too much. You stop in front of a statue shaped like a fisherman, hand outstretched like he's reeling in an invisible catch. His mouth twitches. Then, it started with a song. You look around. The villagers don't seem alarmed. In fact, they avoid eye contact entirely and walk very, very quickly. You grab the nearest passerby. "Excuse me, why are the statues talking?" The man sighs. "Because the gods are bored again." And with that, he scurries off like a man who's had to explain divine nonsense too many times before lunch. You find the town square eventually, and more importantly, the local temple. It's dedicated to Hermes, god of travelers, liars, and that one guy who always shows up to parties uninvited, but somehow makes it work. The priest inside is young, nervous-looking, and polishing a sandal with far too much enthusiasm. "I don't suppose you know anything about why the statues are talking?" you ask. He flinches. "We're working on it." "What does that mean?" He gestures you closer. "It started 3 days ago, just after that bard passed through." You groan. "Of course it was a bard." "A woman," he continues, "name of Thalia, said she was one of the muses, but honestly, she also tried to pay with a handful of figs and a hug, so we're not sure." You pause. "Did she sing anything while she was here?" He nods. "A song about memory and statues, and how even silence has a story that's weirdly poetic. She rhymed heroic with diuretic. It was also weirdly poetic." You find Thalia at the edge of the olive grove outside town, sitting on a rock and arguing with a pigeon. "No," you interrupted. "The chorus," she says. The pigeon coos angrily. She notices you and waves. Finally, someone with eyebrows. These birds don't appreciate nuance. You sit beside her. "I heard your song did something." She blinks. "Oh, that? Yeah. Sorry. I got carried away. Sometimes when a muse sings too close to something enchanted, like, say, a statue with a dormant echo spell, it activates weird feedback loops." "And you didn't think that might be a problem?" She shrugs. "Problem or opportunity? Depends how you frame it," you sigh. "Can you undo it?" She tilts her head. "Maybe, but it's tricky. The magic's spread now. It's not just my song. The statues are sharing memories with each other, like gossiping granite." You pinch the bridge of your nose. "What do you need?" She grins. "A chorus." You blink. "I'm not singing." "Oh, I wasn't going to ask you. I've heard your humming." Rude. That night, in the square, a handful of musicians gather. Lyres, pipes, even a guy with a pot he insists is percussive. You stand awkwardly to the side while Thalia conducts. She starts singing. Not a melody this time, but a lullaby, gentle, threaded with old names and half-remembered tales. One by one, the statues begin to still. They don't freeze. They relax. That's the only way to describe it. Like the tension bleeds out of the marble, the fisherman lowers his rod. The woman with the pie smiles faintly. The one that warned you about the rooster gives a thumbs up. You blink. "Did it work?" Thalia exhales. "For now. They're not talking, but they're listening. Which is better?" She turns to you. "You should head south next. There's a grove where dreams are growing on trees again. Very unseasonal," you nod. "Of course there is," she winks. "Tell Apollo I said hi if you see him. And that his fashion sense still needs work." You chuckle. "He'll be thrilled." As you leave the village, one of the statues murmurs softly. The story continues, whether you hear it or not. You glance back once, then adjust your cloak and head for the hills. Somewhere ahead are dream trees and probably more gods making poor choices. But you've got a map, a pouch of almonds, and a name for yourself now. The shepherd who doesn't stay put. The path south is quieter than the ones before. Not silent, just softer. The wind seems to sigh instead of whistle. The trees lean inward like they're trying to whisper secrets they're not quite brave enough to say aloud. It's peaceful, in the way that makes you slightly uncomfortable. You keep waiting for something to explode, or at least dramatically shimmer, but no, just bees. A lot of bees, actually. You brush a few away from your sleeve and wonder, not for the first time, why every time Apollo sends you somewhere, it comes with an oddly specific side effect. First the river spiral, then statue murmurs, and now Apian. Ambiance. You reach the grove just before dusk, and it's beautiful. Not in the way temples or sunrises are beautiful, but in the way dreams are when you first wake up and can still remember them. The trees are slender, pale-trunked, with leaves that shimmer like silver threads, and hanging from the branches, not fruit, not flowers, dreams. They look like bubbles, each one softly glowing, floating just slightly off the branches. Inside each one, faint images flicker. A child flying, a lost dog being found, someone dancing with both feet off the ground. You reach out, instinctively, and the closest dream moves just out of reach. Smart. You step further in, and that's when you see her, a woman curled at the base of one of the trees, arms folded, snoring, gently. Her hair is full of twigs, her robe stained with what appears to be nectar. One sandal is halfway off. You recognize her instantly. Hypnos, you ask? She opens one eye. Technically, I'm one of his nieces, but close enough. You sit down beside her. You're in charge of dream trees? Temporarily, she yawns. Moros was covering last week, but he got distracted by a doom spiral in Sparta. So now it's me. You blink. Is everyone freelancing lately? She shrugs. Olympus hasn't exactly been paying well. Fair. You gesture to the trees. So, what's the problem? She looks around. Honestly, they're too active. Dreams are supposed to grow slowly, absorb a little subconscious here, a little astral resonance there, but lately they've been popping up like mushrooms in a comedy club. You stare. That is oddly specific. She grins. You should hear the dreams. One guy in Crete keeps imagining he's being chased by sentient bread. Not metaphorical bread, like whole loaves. You try not to laugh. You fail, she continues. Something stirring in the dream field, probably divine, possibly annoying, almost certainly musical. You groan. Let me guess. Apollo? She tilts her head. Or one of his brothers? Dream interference does run in the family, you sigh. What do you need me to do? She sits up and stretches, her joints cracking like old tree branches. You need to climb one of the older dream trees, pick a fruit, then sleep under it. Let it show you where the interference is coming from. Why me? She smirks. Because I'm terrible at climbing, and you have protagonist energy. The tree she points to is older than the rest. Its bark is etched with faded symbols, some familiar, others shifting every time you blink. You scale it slowly, carefully, feeling the dream bubbles part, like fog around you. Near the top, you find one that calls to you, not literally. It just feels right. Warm, buzzing faintly with something like music but too distant to name. You pluck it. It doesn't burst. It sings just once, a tiny high-pitched hum that settles into your bones like a lullaby you forgot you knew. You climb down, curl beneath the trunk, and close your eyes. The dream doesn't feel like a dream. It feels like a memory you never lived. You're walking through a golden field, except the grass is made of light. The sky above you shifts from stars to clouds to fireflies. In the distance, you see a figure, tall, glowing faintly, tuning a lyre made of starlight. You approach. He doesn't look up, but he speaks. You again. You blink. Me? Apollo. Finally turns. He looks tired, not physically, but cosmically, like someone who's run too many marathons across too many realities and just wants to nap under a cloud. This isn't my doing, he says. Not exactly, you fold your arms. The dream trees say otherwise. They're wrong, he murmurs. It's not me, it's the remnants of me, echoes from when I used to dream loudly. You frown. You can't just stop dreaming. That's like divine law, Apollo chuckles. I'm trying to be something else for a while. Quiet, small, invisible. You squint. You're literally glowing. It's low glow, he sighs. But maybe I pushed too hard, cut too much. The dreams, the music, They're leaking out where I tried to bottle them in. You sit beside him. So what now? He shrugs. Maybe I need to stop running from what I was. Let it in. Slowly, you hesitate. And the dream trees? He looks at you finally. Really looks. You'll tell them, he says. You've become a decent messenger, you know. You roll your eyes. I'll put it on my resume. You wake up slowly, the sky above you fading from rose to indigo. The dream bubble you picked has melted into mist. And the woman, Hypnos's niece, is leaning on a tree, watching. Well, she asks. He's trying to be human, you say softly. She snorts. Classic. But he's listening, she nods. Then so will we. The grove begins to quiet. The dream bubbles drift back toward the branches. The trees still shimmer, but now it's calmer, more like candlelight than wildfire. You stand, stretch, and brush the grass from your clothes. Where to next? You ask. She smiles. There's a cave up the coast. Something in it has been humming for 3 days straight. Might be a problem. Might be a party. You nod. Sounds about right. As you leave the grove, a small dream bubble floats past your shoulder and pops with a faint giggle. You grin. Onward, shepherd. By now your feet know the rhythm. Dust, pebbles, the occasional goat judging you from a high rock like a tiny wool-clad philosopher. You've stopped trying to explain your job to passing strangers. I follow divine weirdness, you once said to a cart driver. He gave you a turnip and told you to be careful around mirrors. You still don't know what he meant. The coast begins to rise ahead of you, low cliffs leading toward the sea, crusted with salt and brambles. The wind carries the tang of waves and something else, a note, not a smell, not a voice, a note, just one, drawn out like someone plucking a harp string and forgetting to let go. It rises and falls as you climb the ridge, fading in and out like breath. You finally reach the cave at midday. It's wider than you expect, arched like a cathedral, carved into the rock as if the sea had once decided to sculpt something romantic and then gave up halfway. And inside, the hum. It's coming from the walls, or the floor, or your teeth. Hard to tell. Echo cave, says a voice behind you. You spin. It's a young man in a tattered cloak sitting cross-legged on a nearby boulder. He looks about 19, bored and vaguely translucent. I was wondering when someone else would show up. He says, Are you a ghost? He shrugs. Ghost, resonance, failed memory of a bard. Depends who you ask. You squint. And the humming? He lifts a hand. That's me trying to remember a song I forgot. You stare. That's it? He grins sheepishly. I was cursed by a minor goddess of repetition. Every time I forget a verse, it loops in my head forever, like forever. You wince. Oof. Yeah, I thought this cave might help since it amplifies sound. But now the cave has also forgotten the song, so it just hums aimlessly. We're trauma-bonded. You step inside just past the threshold. The cave shivers. No, you do, because suddenly you're hearing more than humming. Bits of conversation, laughter, weeping, a donkey braying in an oddly judgmental tone, all echoes. People have been yelling in this cave for centuries, the bard ghost explains. The stone keeps all of it. Poor things trying to find harmony. You touch the wall. It's warm. Like skin. I'm here to help, you say, unsure who you're speaking to, but the humming pauses, just for a moment, and then resumes. Quieter now, like it's listening. You sit beside the ghost. Can you still sing? He shrugs. Bits and pieces. My memory's shot, but my pitch is flawless. You smile. Then maybe we don't need the old song. Maybe we just make a new one. You start humming, softly. Nothing fancy. Just a simple tune your mother once used when you couldn't sleep. The bard joins in. Then the cave joins. Echoes begin to sink, layer by layer. A child's giggle fits perfectly into a descending scale. A whispered prayer becomes the bridge. The donkey, somehow, manages harmony. It builds, not louder but deeper, like a river swelling. You don't conduct, you just let it happen. And when it's done, when the final hum fades into the stones, you feel it. Quiet, not silence. Something. Better. Peace. The ghost leans back, smiling. That's the first rest I've felt in centuries. You help him to his feet. So. You good? He nods. Think I'll drift a while? Maybe haunt a vineyard. You'll make a great vintage. Bows, then flickers out like a lantern sighing. You step outside. The sun's lower now, painting the waves in gold. The cave behind you hums once, softly, like a farewell, and goes still. There's someone waiting at the edge of the cliff. You recognize the robe first. Blue, trimmed in silver. It billows without wind. The figure turns, and there he is again, Apollo. Hair too perfect, smile just slightly sad. You've been busy, he says. You shrug. So have your side effects, he chuckles. I'm learning. Letting go of things I used to hold too tightly. Some of them keep echoing anyway. You sit beside him. The cave's okay now. It's not quiet, but it's calm. That's better than most of Olympus, he says. You look at him. You ever miss it? The worship, the temples, the statues, shaped like your jawline? He tilts his head. Sometimes, but I think I miss being listened to more than being praised. You nod. That's fair? There's a pause. A gentle one. The kind you can lean into. Apollo looks east. There's a city where they're building a temple from old songs. I want to visit it. Need company? He smiles. No, you've got another stop first. You raise an eyebrow. Let me guess. Something weird. He grins wider. A spring where the water flows uphill, possibly cursed, definitely scenic. You stand. Of course. He claps you on the shoulder. You've done well, shepherd. You sigh. Still not an actual shepherd. He winks. Details. As he vanishes in a shimmer of light and melodrama, you mutter, show off. But you're smiling. The wind picks up. You turn south. The road waits, and somewhere ahead, water climbs the sky.